Hello class, this is your instructor, Miss Birchfield. In this mini lesson, we are going to factor binomials and what are called perfect square trinomials. So in order to factor binomials, there are two things we're going to look for. We're either going to have what's called a difference of two squares, which is a binomial that we want to break down, or two cubes. So what does it mean to be when we say difference of two squares? Well, think about perfect squares. When we have perfect squares, remember our list of perfect squares are 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, 121, 144, so on. All right, and in the previous lesson on radicals, simplifying radicals, perfect squares, perfect cubes, I would encourage you to learn these first, at least the first 12, so that you can easily recognize, oh, okay, that's a perfect square. So if we have a binomial that we want to factor, and when we look at it, to be a difference of two squares, first thing I have to have is I need a binomial that has a minus, and I want each of these terms to be perfect squares so that I can easily just basically take the square root of each one and I'll place those in my binomials with different signs. These are what we're called conjugates when we fold them out. So what happened when we fold out these two binomials was that the middle terms ended up canceling out. So instead of getting a trinomial, we got a binomial. So let's look at these examples. All right, notice that we have two terms that's separated by a minus. These terms, they're both a perfect square, so what we can do is easily break them down into R and H. And then all we do is just put different signs. One has a positive, one has a negative, and then we're done. You can check it by folding it out, and when you fold it out, you'll see that the middle two terms will cancel, so you're left with that binomial. The second example, it's a binomial. Notice it has a minus, it's a difference. Each term are perfect squares, so I can break this one into 5y plus 3 and 5y minus 3. And we're done. This third example, I've got a difference, but notice that the terms are not perfect squares. But remember, when we factor, we always check for a GCS. We have a common factor here. 2 is common to 18 and 8, so what we're going to do is factor out 2. Let's divide. If we factor 2 out, we'll divide to get 9r squared minus 4. Now when you look at this binomial, notice it is a difference of two perfect squares. So we can bring the 2 down, and then we can just take the square root to get 3r plus 2, and then 3r minus 2. And that's our factors. This last one you have to be careful with. Notice the terms are perfect squares, but that sign is not a minus sign. That's a plus. This is what's called a sum of two squares. We have no way of breaking a sum down into factors that would multiply to give us 16x squared plus 1. So this particular binomial is not factorable. So A, B, L, let's see, not factorable. You might hear some people say it's prime. I think MathLab says not factorable. So we could also have binomials that are not squares but could be perfect cubes. Think about your perfect cubes. We have 1, we have 8, we have 27, 64, 125, and typically those are your more common ones, just the first 5. If we have a binomial that is a sum or difference of cubes, what we're going to do is use this little formula here. So what we'll do to break it down, these are cubes. This first example is I'm going to take the cube root of each term here, and I'm going to place it in the first factor in the binomial. Well, the cube root of 8 is 2. The cube root of x cubed is x. I'm going to bring a plus down since it's a sum, and I'm going to do the cube root of 27, which is 3. So what we've done here is we've done this first part of our formula. Now we need to do the second part. In order to get that trinomial, all we're going to do is take what we found in the binomial. I'm going to square the 2x. I'm going to get 2x squared. I'm going to place a minus because of the formula. And then I'm going to multiply 2x and 3 together to get this middle term. And then to get the last term, I'm going to square the 3 and I'm going to get 9. Here we have our, sorry, I missed, this should not 2x, it should be 4x squared. I didn't think that looked right. 4x squared. So now we have our factors. Now you could not fully, but you could distribute these out to see if it matches up. But what happens is once you distribute it out, things start canceling out, and you're left with this perfect, a perfect cube, a sum of 2 cubes. Here we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to use the second one because of the minus. So to determine this binomial here, we're going to do the cube root of these terms. So the x cubed will break down into an x. I'm going to have a minus, and then the cube root of 125 is 5, and then my y cube is y. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cube the x. My sign now is a plus, and then I'm going to multiply x and 5y together to get 5xy. And then I'm going to have a plus again, and to get the last term, I'm going to square the 5y to get 25y squared. The last one here is what's called a perfect square trinomial. Now, you could use these two, but really all we need to really do is use what's called the x factor. But I'm looking at this, and I actually see that we have we can actually take out a GCF on this one. Notice that 4 is a common factor of each of those numbers. So what we're going to do is factor out that 4. So what we're going to do is remove a 4. This is what I was talking about. Always check for a GCF first. So that would give us x squared minus 8x plus 16. So now what we can do is, using the diamond method or slip and slide, we can put 16 in the top, we can put a negative 8 in the bottom, and what we're looking for are two numbers that will multiply to get a positive 16 and that will add to get us a negative 8. Well, in order to add numbers, we have to have the same sign. 4 and 4 gives me 16, but to get a negative 8, I need both of my 4's to be a negative 4. You can easily check it. Multiply those together, you get a positive 16, and then negative 4 minus 4 is a negative 8. So to factor this, I'm just going to bring down. I'm going to have minus 4, and the short way, since both factors are the same, we can write it using an exponent, writing as an exponent squared. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.